Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny
And Kenny Squared. How are you guys doing today?
wow, we are doing great. We'll get to that in a second. This is Sports on the Positive Tip podcast and a lot to talk about. We'll get back to the NBA Finals, I guess, next week, huh, Ken? Miami living to die another day, maybe? We'll see. But at least a game six
Yeah.
coming up Sunday.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting. Jimmy Butler has played like crazy, and I think there'll be some more to unpack. I guess we have to see how it's gonna fully end on sometime next week.
Yeah. It's been there's a couple of really good games here and there in that series. It's just been really, really intriguing. I was thinking of this that there's no like parade or anything like that, right? They win, they all probably gonna go home or something. They'll probably do something virtually, maybe.
Yeah. I remember with the Nationals, they said that they're not gonna do like their ring celebration from last year until they can have fans in the park. So they might do something beginning of next year, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's very weird.
Well, and speaking of fans in the park, looks like there are going to be fans in Arlington, right? About 11,000.
Yeah, yeah, for both the NLCS and the World Series, they said
Yeah,
they're selling tickets for it.
yeah. Hey, Ken, I want to hear from you, but I just wanted to say this real quick. The the myth that is not like home field advantage in baseball, I think to me is a little bit of a myth. And I'll tell you the play that last night showed that the most was when Aaron Judge hit his head like on the overhang as he's trying to
Yeah,
jump for that home run. Now, if you're a Padre and you played or a National League player and you played, in that building, in that stadium, a lot of times you would kind of know, that you don't stand all the way underneath that you have to make a running thing because he might have caught that because he's so tall. It just barely made it over the fence.
yeah, I would agree honestly.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
whole neutral field thing, I think, it's weird. It's definitely not something because like in football and basketball, neutral fields are still all the same dimensions. In
Yeah.
baseball, every field is different, so
Yeah.
it plays so much differently.
Yeah, it does. All right, so let's get to it. My son, huge Yankee fan. The Yankees lose last night. They lose the series. So give us your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I think the Rays are a very good team. Um, like they're a weird team in the sense that like you don't really know many of their players unless like you play them as much as like some of the AL East teams do. But
Yep.
they're a good team. Um, they know how to manage their players. They know how like they get the most out of each and every guy that's in that lineup. And everyone has like such a little ego that they don't care if they're starting, if they come in late or anything like that. Um, Also, the story of Brousseau to me is very interesting. Um, like he gets a 100-mile-an-hour pitch right behind his head back in September, follows it up the next day with 2 home runs, and then knocks the team out that did it against the same pitcher. Like
He
that's
hit
quite the
two.
revenge
He hit two
story.
home runs the next day back in the regular season. Really?
Yep.
Wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's a very interesting story. Now, as far as the Yankees go, sometimes it's hard to for people to admit it, but it seems like Aroldis Chapman isn't Mariano. Nobody is really. But I look at this year, I look at last year. Both times he gave up home runs after pitching multiple innings, multiple days in a row. Um, he's the type of guy you put him in the ninth inning, he'll be solid, but you can't put him in the seventh or eighth.
Hmm.
He's not equipped for it, and that's
Right.
fine.
Right.
Um, Also, I think something that's really been overlooked is the Yankees are missing 3 guys that I think really would have made the difference. Um, you look at Zach Britton, Chad Green, and Aroldis Chapman, they kind of held the bullpen. Um, but they were missing that fourth guy. Tommy Kahnle was really good last year.
Okay.
Um, I think having him would have definitely stretched out the game, both game 4 and 5. But especially last night, you wouldn't have gone with Zach Britton in the 6th inning. You probably would have gone with Kahnle, especially with Green pitching so much.
Hmm.
Um, and then also missing Paxton and Severino, I think, is something that a lot of people overlooked. Like game 2 probably would have been started by Paxton or Severino. Imagine the four starters being Cole, Paxton, Tanaka, Severino.
Yeah.
That's a lot better than what they put out there.
Oh, no
Not
doubt.
saying that, not saying like you can blame it all on injuries, but I think they definitely missed those guys. And I think looking to next year, they should probably add another pretty good starter, and also I would say add another bullpen arm. Ottavino didn't look too great, but either way, you got to give credit to the Rays. It was a crazy tight game. I think I had read it was the first game where there was 10 strikeouts and less than, or 6 hits, and each team had 10 strikeouts or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very intense, very
Everybody
tight.
was striking out left and right last night.
Yeah.
But that's been kind of the theme of this whole playoffs. So, okay. So you said bullpen for next year, definitely add another arm. What did the Yankees do about catching?
I don't know. Part of me says give Gary Sanchez a regular offseason, give him like a full season, because there were times where he would be batting like below 200 for like over a long stretch, and this just happened to be the whole season. I think he still could be the answer, but I definitely want to see like a little bit more of a platoon, kind of like what the Yankees did in the 90s with Girardi and Posada. Like Higashioka shows that he can really like hold down a pitching staff, and he also has a little bit of a bat. So
yeah.
But I think Gary Sanchez still, when he's on, he's one of the toughest hitters in all of baseball. So
no doubt. I mean, he's got a ton of power, right? Hasn't he hit 30 home runs a couple of times? More than 30?
Yeah. He also kills the Red Sox, so I was like that.
We'll see if the Red Sox are going to even be a factor for a year or two. You know, the catcher that they had in, I had really never heard of him, but I really, the plays he was making behind the plate was unbelievable, right?
Yeah, he was absolutely phenomenal. It's actually interesting. He's the second longest tenured Yankee behind Brett Gardner.
Really, I'd never heard of him.
Yeah,
I never heard of him.
He the last few years he's kind of been like, he's been the guy called up when like either Sanchez or Romine got hurt. So he's kind of the third string catcher.
Okay.
But this year with Romine going to Detroit in free agency, he kind of finally got his opportunity. So
he was with them all year this year?
Yeah.
Okay. I know they have that other catcher that I had heard of. I was surprised he was still playing. He's like 40-41, right? Eric Krantz?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, you're positive, which is good. You know, I know you're disappointed. I know this was a year that you had to figure that the Yankees had a shot here, but Tampa is good. I'm glad you gave them a lot of credit. So let me start to get your opinion here on let's stay in the American League. Tampa and the Astros. I mean, the Astros aren't going away, man. I mean, they're right there. It is hard. It's hard for me to root against them now because I really, really like Dusty Baker. I just think he's one of the most underrated managers ever. But oh my gosh, it's amazing how these guys have woken up in the postseason. So what are your thoughts? Early thoughts on this series?
First of all, as a Yankee fan, it's really hard to watch this series. But you look at all four of the teams that are left. The Rays have never won a World Series. The Dodgers haven't won one since '88. Yeah. The Braves since '95. I always like to root for the teams that haven't won it in a while when it's not the Yankees. But the Astros are very interesting. I think they're one team that's benefited from the shortened season. Because they, first of all, like they were the talk of baseball when spring training started.
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about how, like, the cheating scandal, they were getting booed in spring training games. Guys were throwing at them left and right. So they really benefited from everything getting shut down. And then no fans, like, they can just kind of continue to play their game. They also benefited from the expanded playoffs. I mean, the Yankees wouldn't have made it either based on their record. But, I mean, they were a sub-500 team, but the West is that bad that they were able to sneak in there.
Yeah.
But I do think it is very interesting because, like, for me, like, as a Yankee fan, I'm like, wow, they lost to this cheating team in 2017. They lost to them in 2019. Alex Cora, which was part of the 2017, was the manager that beat them in 2018.
Right.
So it's like you look at it and you're like, man, why does it seem like everyone's just getting away with cheating? Especially like none of the players got suspended, none of them got fined. Like they get to keep their ring. So you look at it and you think like, wow, like how is it that cheaters prosper? And it really got me thinking about the scriptures where it says like, why does it seem like evil seems to prevail, and why does it seem like good people fall? I'm not saying like the Astros are evil, but I think just the concept that sometimes we look at our lives and we think, wow, like, why does it seem like people are doing the wrong thing and getting away with it? But when I try to do the right thing, nothing happens. But God also says that vengeance is mine. And we just have to trust that God's going to do what God's going to do. And yes, it may be frustrating to see stuff like cheating prosper or evil thrive in our society, but God's going to take care of it in the end.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree. And you know, on the other hand, I think also the Astros are thinking, hey, we can now show the world that we can win without cheating, because they're obviously not cheating now.
Yeah, if they were cheating, I would hope that someone would notice it.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I'll see if I can pull this up. Just the drop off of, okay, here it is. So these are the Astros batting averages in 2017. Jose Altuve hit 346. That was his MVP season. Shouldn't have won it. Correa 315. Bregman 284. Gurriel 299. Springer 283. Reddick 314.
Oh.
2020. Altuve hits 219. Correa 264. Bregman 242. Gurriel 232. Springer 269. Reddick 245.
He's
so pretty much
right now. Yeah.
Yeah, like you look at it, and a lot of those guys really have drop offs. Now, part of it could be like, especially a guy like Altuve getting old, kind of falling off on his career. But you look at those numbers, and you're like, wow. But if they make the World Series, it's
Yeah, that's a steep drop. I mean, something's woken them up now, though. But that's a crazy drop off. You know, I listen. It definitely had something to do with their success. There's no doubt about that. In my mind, there's no doubt. But you said it right with scripture, and you know, let God take care of it. You know, but we see them up there hoisting up the World Series trophy this year. We're gonna be like, God, where are you? You know?
Yeah, and especially like to me, Correa has been the most annoying person with it all. Kind of saying like, here, this is like, I don't know why people are mad. Like, where are all the haters at? Well, like you still cheated in 2017. Even if they win this year, like that'll never, like what you did in the past, like people will still remember it.
Well, and they're definitely benefiting from having no fans. So what's your prediction for Rays Astros?
I think the Rays have better pitching. I think the Astros are really going to miss Justin Verlander. They played two teams that are horrible in the playoffs. The Rays seem very hungry to win it. I'm going to go Rays in 6.
Okay, Rays in 6. We have it on tape. You know, so Rays in 6. Yeah, the last quick thing I'll say on American League, not mine. I mean, I have the jersey on here, but the Oakland A's. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, you know, I don't get it. When are they going to get past? Oh, anyway, that's a story for another one. Let's go to the National League, and you got two really, really good teams here, huh? With the Braves and Dodgers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is one where I don't care who wins, because either way, whoever wins it, they'll have a chance to break a really long World Series drought. The Braves have really, really good pitching, though. They've shut out their playoff opponents 4 out of 5 games that they've played.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I think this will be one of your like classic 7-game series. I don't know. I feel like the factor might end up being Mookie Betts. Either way, like I think it is the Dodgers' year. They've won 8 straight division titles. They've lost to the eventual World Series champion each of the last few years. I just think the Dodgers are a little bit more well-rounded, but I do think it's going to be a really good series. And like you look at some of the storylines too, like Freddie Freeman's story with him starting out the season with COVID and then not only like playing well, but could win the MVP. It'll be a good series. But yeah, I'd say Dodgers 7.
Dodgers is okay. I'm going with that. So Dodgers and Rays, we're looking at for the World Series, which would be really good. I think, especially for the baseball fans. Some people may say, the Rays, but I think that'll be a good series. I'll say this for me real quick. It's all my not all my life, because I used to like the Braves when I was younger, when they had Hank Aaron and everybody. But when they had the rivalry with the Mets, I despise the Braves, And again, positive tip, it's hard for me not to like them now, because I think Acuna is just a special once-in-a-lifetime type player. I liked how Marcell Ozuna had such a comeback year. And as much as I'm hating seeing him do it with another team, Travis d'Arnaud, I always liked him with the Mets. I saw the potential, but I mean, the guy's just tearing it up. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And listen, Freddie Freeman, I never was crazy about. He seems a little arrogant to me, but I have to say, what he did this year was simply short of amazing to recover the way he did. And I think he should win the MVP. They were, the top, they were a winning team. And he had, the best numbers overall, out there. So we'll see. It should be good. I'm going to stay with your predictions. I'm not going to predict. I think I'll just sit back, relax. And I have no stake in the game. Now it's funny because I'm sitting up watching these whole games. I was glad they started at 7, so I was able to see the whole game. All right. I have one quick thing for today. I wanted to share just how we could be deceived so easily. But I'm going to share something lighthearted, but I want to talk about 1 Timothy in a second. And so I asked you to look up the story of Sid Finch. And it's so funny, you probably heard me mention it before. You're like, yeah, sure, I'll look it up. Oh, now you're like, what is this? 1985, Sports Illustrated their edition happens to come out on April 1st. So they figured it would be a fun thing to come up with a fictitious story. So they come up with the story of a guy named Sid Finch, and that he was a prospect that the Mets had signed. So, oh my gosh, Met fan, I'm pumped up. But you read the story, you should have known that it was off, right? So as an example, he'll only pitch if he's barefoot on one foot and he has a heavy boot on the other. That he wouldn't pitch otherwise, and baseball approved it. He's kind of this. He grew up in an English orphanage. He was adopted by an archaeologist, and he's into like Tibetan yoga. And so he really doesn't like sports. He really doesn't like baseball. He really likes playing the French horn. So he's trying to choose between baseball and the French horn. He reluctantly still signs with the Mets. But here's what should have given it away. They clocked his fastball at 168 miles an hour. And they said that he never needed to warm up, that he threw it straight. He had pinpoint accuracy and control at 168 miles an hour. I was like, ain't nobody gonna hit that. Yeah. So here was the fun part, though. The Mets were actually in on the joke. So they call a press conference in spring training for April 2nd. And the Mets put his locker in between George Foster's and Darryl Strawberry's locker. They actually have Sid Finch. And they put stuff in there. So the press is like, they can't wait to see this guy. So NBC, ABC, and CBS all send reporters, all send national reporters to this press conference to announce the signing of Sid Finch and to meet him. And so the word is he's really camera shy, so he kind of hides his face. It's just another sports writer that played him, right? George Plimpton is a pretty famous author for back then, and he's the one who wrote the article and then wrote a book a few years later about it. At the press conference, Sid Finch announces that I'm going to choose the French horn, that I'm retiring. I'm not going to play baseball. And so everybody's really upset now, So for the next 13 days or so, everybody's trying to find this guy and figure out what's going on. It's not until April 15th that Sports Illustrated announces that it was all a joke. It was a hoax. But it was funny, right? But I have to tell you, we all fell for it. I fell for it. And then we were like, why can't this guy play? Hopefully the Mets can convince him. Come and play 168 miles an hour, right? So anyway, the story of Sid Finch, it's funny, it's lighthearted, but we can be easily deceived. And so I mentioned this to you, Ken. I would hope I'm just, we're not here to plug stuff, right? But the movie, The Social Dilemma, it's a documentary that's on Netflix. I would just recommend for everybody to see that and see how devices have just really taken over our lives and in a bad way, not in a good way. See, what we're doing today is a good thing, right? Where folks can see us on video, we're talking sports, things like that. And you and I look for stuff like this as well. And I think the phone is a great thing, especially right through now with the virus, and you can't see people physically. So you can, but if you watch and see how easily deceived we are in such a bad way, and I think it was really highlighted a few years ago when that guy went into that pizzeria in downtown DC thinking it was a child trafficking ring because someone started that rumor online, and he goes in it and he shoots people, thinking that he's going in to save, kids. And why somebody chose that place is unbelievable. But anyway, I would recommend, watching that. And then, for what you do with your youth, I think it would be good for them. But First Timothy in chapter 2 at verse 14, and it was not Adam who was deceived by Satan. The woman was deceived, and sin was the result. Lighthearted story about Sid Finch, has nothing to do with sin, right? But the way we can be deceived, that can lead to sin. And it just, to me, we need to just fall back on one thing, and that's Jesus Christ, right? And that's the absolute word in the Bible. That's all we can fall back on if we're watching something. Wait a second, is that true? Wait a second, is that true? At the end of the day, that's not going to matter. Let's read what's true and what's true to the word in the Bible. So anyway, I would also recommend go back and read the story of Sid Finch. It is hysterical. Reading it now, all these years later, from when I was a 25-year-old, and I wasn't a kid, I'm 25 years old, I totally fell for it. But it's a really fun read. All right, let's wrap up. So we've got Tampa against the Dodgers. We've got some things for the Yankees to go on next year. So we'll follow all of that closely. We'll talk about the NBA playoffs next week. But for now, this is Kenny and
Kenny Squared
with the sports on the Positive Tip podcast. We will talk to you real soon.
All right, you guys have a great day.